So, Mr. Bleyer, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it. The purpose of our meeting today is to talk about the year and talk about how your experience was and talk about my few experiences in your classroom, what that looked like and what components I saw when I didn't see. But remember that this is the coach-player relationship. It's not the what you did right, what you did wrong relationship.
Okay.
So as we talk, I want to make sure we keep that in mind of the coach-player. We're talking about ways to get better and strengthen ourselves and celebrate the things that went well. As a first-year teacher, your first rodeo, I think we sat here, gosh, almost a year ago, and I tried to talk you into this thing.
I think it was more. I think it was a little more than a year.
Was it a year?
I think so. Yeah.
Was it April?
We were still. The school year was still going. I think when I accepted the job.
Yeah.
I think
you're right.
Because I know that. Yeah. In fact, I know because it was before Pull Pedal Paddle.
Oh.
Because when I gave my notice at the television station, I said I'll definitely be here for the Pull Pedal Paddle. I want to be there to cover that for you.
Right.
And that was like 2 or 3 weeks out or a month out or something. So I think I think it was in April of last year.
Isn't that funny?
Yep.
I mean, seemed like 3 years ago and almost yesterday.
Summer was a blur. That I know. It kind of, at times it crawled and at times it didn't. Flying by.
So coming into the school year, you had some preconceived notions about how it would go, knowing that there was so much that you didn't know that you were just going to kind of take it on as it went. And so at the beginning of the year to set professional goals was, I wouldn't use the word daunting, but just a little bit confusing because you didn't know what to expect.
Yes.
Accurate?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So the goal that you had was, and I'll just read you the first statement here. My priority at the moment is to get students working with all the equipment, at least in basic form. That's what the course is all about. Next, I need to step back at some point soon and make sure I'm on track with my CT licensing and the required elements. I do not feel like I'm playing, I do feel like I'm playing it minute to minute at times rather than look at the big picture. At the end of soccer season, I think I'll have more opportunities to do that.
So I wrote this after the school year began.
Yes.
Shortly after.
Shortly after.
Okay.
Shortly after.
Yeah.
And then the next statement is, I started to create a day-by-day curriculum that would guide me through the trimester, but both ran out of time and also realized I was probably moving the kids too quickly. I feel another look at the big picture and the creation of that day-to-day planner is possible now that I've been teaching for a month. Now I need time to just get it done. And then the last thing you wrote there, what is critical to your, for you to assess your goals in this success, a clear trimester calendar of learning objectives will help me to make sure that the students are on track and that I am not drifting into unnecessary errors and moving too slowly. However, I am cognizant of trying not to move too quickly either. Planning and laying out long-term schedules is difficult when you and the students are doing something together for the first time. I think that's really well said.
I agree with me. Okay.
Well, but looking at, I mean, as a new teacher, really, you're not looking at the finer points of how do I modify. You're looking at how do I do this?
Right.
How do I a lesson plan, a learning objective, and 75 minutes, and let's get this sucker organized. And so, talk to me about at the end of first trimester, how are you feeling compared to where you're feeling right now that you've got almost 3 terms under your belt? And by the way, of some curriculum, very comfortable with industry-wise, and other curriculum, never seen it before, got handed photography curriculum and said, hey, here's a link, buddy, go get it. So talk to me about end of first trimester versus where you're feeling right now.
Well, much more comfortable, right out of the box with all the TV-related stuff. Photography, it was a crash course, and I made sure that I didn't overload myself in terms of trying to know it all and teach it all. But that scaffolding phrase or that word that was used so much in education that I probably had never used until I got here is apropos. I was pouring the concrete and laying the big wooden beams and all of that pretty much as the year was progressing. So the first trimester was a blur. I'm sure there were some really poor days in there in terms of the finer points of education, reaching the learning objective, what are my instructional strategies, how am I making sure that students get it all right, or you at least give them the opportunity to get it all right. I was difficult because I was still pouring the concrete, Second trimester we were adding, windows or the framing around the house, right? And this third trimester is, I think, been the first trimester where I've had a chance to go, okay, I've done this twice. I'm doing it for a third time, first of all, because it works, because I felt it worked.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that did not work first or second time out, I scrapped a lot of it, you know, or sped it up or slowed it down, because that speed thing is something I can really relate to, having been there. Tried I moved them too fast to begin with, slowed it down, and then it was a little too slow for some of the advanced students, and we've had conversations about, you know, how do you put one group of students on the fast track and another on the slower track because they're struggling to grasp it and do it simultaneously. But so each trimester's been very different. I think the last trimester has been the one where I've been able to sit there and go, I know what I want to teach, I know what the learning objective is, I know how long it's going to take, ballpark, it's always ballpark. Okay, how can I now, with the hour or with the week, become a better teacher? With the questioning strategies, with the think time, which I read in your review just a few minutes ago, which I think is big. Random questioning, you know, and some of the stuff that you mentioned in your evaluation is spot on and accurate in terms of, you know, I think my probably one of my primary faults this year has been the students that are struggling, fair or unfair. I'm thinking to myself, gosh, you know, 80% of my class is getting it. Are the 20% not getting it or struggling because they don't care, because they've been absent too many times? And how much does that fall on me, and what can I do about it? So that's just kind of a thought off the top of my head. But the main point of all of it is each trimester I felt a little bit more comfortable. I've relaxed a little bit, which I think is good, and can at times be bad. But those are all, you know, definite. Each trimester was a definite hurdle cleared, for sure. You know, but as much as I want to say the day-by-day curriculum, which I have started to, it's almost too detailed for you in what I first submitted, has been helpful. Every day is different, baby. Every day. I mean, and even yesterday I had a deadline for a major project, news packages, 5th period, TV news journalism. And I'm walking around the class, and there are great projects. I remember going, this is good, that's good, ooh, they just missed here. And I stopped and said, hang on, great, everything I see is good, but you're all rushing to get it done. You know, could we have worked a little bit faster? Sure, but let's get it right. So a couple more days, Tuesday, and they were high-fiving each other, you know, not because they got an extension, maybe some of them, but I think a lot of them were just like, all right, yeah, we're getting it, you know, so that was cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the analogy of the pouring the cement and the beams and putting on the windows, and absolutely that's what your first really 2 years are going to be. And that's just I mean, we talked about that, but the great things are, and we're going to talk about some of those things, Keith, is that what you're doing is you are creating, revising, refining the tangibles of being an effective teacher, because you came with all the intangibles. You came with the experience of coaching with kids. You like kids. You work well with kids. You relate well to kids. You put kids in a position to be successful by the way that you work them into the learning, right? It's not in your classroom. I never observed you saying, here it is, take it or leave it. That was never what I saw. I saw you working different angles to try to get to different kinds of kids and help them click the learning into aha moments.
Yeah, okay.
Now, some of your kids were coming in with lots of murky background in using programs and doing their own videos, right? They had some GarageBand type experiences, and then you had kids in there that's a camera, awesome. How do you turn that thing on? You know, and you didn't have very many of those, I think, but you had a few. And so the range of kids coming into your class and the skill levels, and you trying to do this new curriculum with this new equipment and this new program and all these things, and I've told you this before, but I don't know if anyone could have done better than you did this year in doing that process. And what you're doing a great job of is taking those intangibles and adding the tangible pieces. And that's what makes an effective long-term, happy educator.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does.
Well, connecting with kids through my coaching background,
Yeah.
being comfortable around them, and also having communication tools and skills from being a broadcaster. I think those are the two things that definitely the intangibles.
Yeah. So I was in your classroom this year, 6 official times, or 7 official times, 6 for mini observations, which you receive feedback, sometimes in person, sometimes on the computer, on TED. And then we did 1 formal observation where we met, outlined what the kids were going to learn,
Right.
had the observation, then had a conversation afterwards and talked about the learning that you did there. And then at the end of the year, we had you fill out a self-evaluation of, now that you've had a year under your belt, looking at the rubric, especially domain 3 with engagement, of where you stood. And so I think that you were very thoughtful about your responses, and to be honest with you, I think many of those pieces were spot on.
Okay.
And as you know, we've had a lot of, well, I wouldn't say a lot, we've had, most of our focus has been on domain 3 with the instruction piece and engagement. We've had a little bit of 30 seconds on domain 1 with planning and preparation. That's where you've done quite a bit of work this year for yourself, obviously as a new teacher. The classroom environment, which is where that coaching stuff comes in that we talked about, instruction, and then professional responsibilities. And we've really done nothing there other than, I guess I should turn this so you can see it too. And so this is where how you rated yourself in each of those areas. And so what I want to do is just touch on in your evaluation in each of those areas and talk about what I felt were strengths and areas to strengthen, okay? So, and I know you've reviewed this previously, I kind of shared the evaluation with you so you can kind of look at it and have any questions.
I just read it.
So, and we won't need to read through the whole thing, but in domain 1, I think you're exactly right that your solid industry knowledge really kind of set the stage for you being successful in planning and preparation. I mean, you didn't quite know how it was going to fit in, but you knew the components that needed to fit in, and you ironed it out, right? And sometimes I know when I iron, sometimes I iron in the wrinkle instead of ironing out the wrinkle.
Yeah.
But I felt like you were including the major components and getting kids into those components and learning those things.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the area to strengthen, continue to ensure that you are aware of students' special learning and medical needs and seek new effective instructional strategies that will promote those students in being successful in your classes. That's one of the big things as a new teacher is, okay, now talk to me about what these IEP things are. So I've got special things I need to do with this kid. What does that mean? And so figuring out what that means and getting some help from Ann and from Nate. So if you've got a kid in your class that is on an IEP or has a special medical need, having a side conversation to say, okay, and this is what I think this is telling me to do.
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay.
So I know you were doing that, but just that's something to kind of concentrate on and make sure that you're fulfilling that, because
I would get them, I would read them, and I would kind of tuck it away here. I can't say I went much further than that in terms of like having a conversation either with that student or that student's parents or with the administrator to further it along.
And sometimes it's appropriate to pull a kid aside and say, hey, listen, these are the things that I think we've agreed on to accommodate you in this class. Does that feel right? That's good. Obviously, don't do it in front of their peers. We don't embarrass them. But I think that's good. And then maybe a check-in once or twice a term, pulling the kid aside and saying, hey, how are we doing on this? Or something I'm forgetting to do for you is a good practice. Yeah. It's a good practice to do. Yeah. So that's something to think about. And then continue to seek out materials and resources to use in your class. And I'm thinking specifically for yearbook. You do not have to recreate the wheel. There's some knowledge out there with Karen. You're going to get some training on that. You can reach out to other yearbook advisors. So I don't want you to feel like you have to recreate the wheel. I really want you to take a look at what materials and resources are out there, and not to kill yourself off.
Right. No.
Right? No. Okay. So any questions about domain 1?
No.
Okay, great. And we're not rating a domain 1, 2, or 4 this year. Just so you know, so there's no ratings there.
Okay.
So for domain 2, the classroom environment, I agree that you have been really clear about letting kids know what your expectations are. Whether it's in the learning or whether it's in the behavior in your classroom, when kids walk in there, it feels like when I was observing your classes, kids know the expectation. They know what they're supposed to be doing in there. So we talked about this area to strengthen, and we've talked about that most of the time, obviously, all the time you do a great job of respecting kids, but every once in a while there might be a sarcastic comment that we got to make sure that we're in line, not going over the line.
Right.
And I believe that there's, if that's your relationship with a kid and there's a little bit of good humored sarcasm going back and forth. That's healthy, but it can go into unhealthy quick. And so just to recognize that. I know you've shared.
I've got to be able to. I have to be comfortable with feeling secure and knowing the environment of that specific class, that vibe, that kid, that comment. It's a minefield.
Right.
And I've gotten better over the years at it, but you do have to be very careful.
Yeah. So just be cognizant of that. That's what you need to do. And then the other piece is we've talked about using those lockers outside your room to create a system to check in and check out of those video equipment without leaving your room open.
Right.
And I know we had that experience with the soccer bag this year, and you know, you've been really trusting with your kids, and they produce for you.
Right.
But I'm afraid that if we continue to try to do that, we might run into some issues.
Yeah.
So we need to create a system that's going to work. Okay. And so I kind of want you to think about that, and then get back with me at the beginning of next year and let me know what you want to do.
Okay.
We can buy some locks to put on there and get a bunch of keys for those, and you can check the keys out to kids. And
so the concept of clearing out a couple of those lockers and turning them into key lockers would still be up.
Yep.
Still be working.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think all your equipment would fit in there. We can even build a little shelf so that it could fit the tripod, and then underneath we could put the sound and the camera. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, right.
So I think we can do. I think you're big enough to do that.
Okay.
So anyway, I'd like to pursue that.
Yeah.
Okay. So so then instruction, I thought you self-rated really well. And to be honest with you, it is rare that a brand new teacher gets any proficiency. It's rare because it's your first year. You're at a basic level. And that's okay. There's room to grow. But I felt like on 3A that you had really well planned lessons. You were very thoughtful about that. You're very effective in front of the kids. So your communication with kids, that's one of your really strong points is you're a great communicator. And not only are you a great communicator with some very specific new vocabulary for kids, but you're great at then helping them figure out what that really means and breaking it down for them. So because of that, you were rated proficient. I think an area with which to continue to grow is to increase the frequency of randomly calling on students. And I noticed at the end of the year you were doing that more than you were at the beginning of the year. But having them restate what they're supposed to be doing, because it seems like even though you've said it and everybody should have been paying attention to you, it's nice to get that restate. Now two other kids that were paying attention but didn't get it are now like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. Okay, cool. Instead of, Mr. Bleyer, now that you've released everybody, can you tell me what we're supposed to do? You know, you had that experience this year. Yeah. So that's just something to think about. And that'll further engage them to be, encourage them to be engaged. Yeah.
The quick one that I learned or that worked for me is you would ask to the group, all right, think of something, think of what we've just gone over, because I'm going to start pointing fingers in a couple minutes. And that's that. Nobody wants to be in that. I mean, every classroom that I was ever in, when that happened, you would at least come up with something, whether it was accurate, inaccurate, or BS, or whatever, or right a spot on, or some little nugget, so that you aren't embarrassed in front of your colleagues or your classmates. Yeah. And then you just call on very targeted. It's not all that random. Yeah. Is it? I mean, it is and it isn't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's something to do. I like that. Do more of that. So 3B is using questioning and discussion techniques. And to be honest with you, you were not that far away from being proficient in that area because you really grew over the term that I noticed. You got much better at, instead of doing just recall questions, you were doing some analyzing questions and synthesizing questions and evaluation questions. You were mixing those in better. So that's an area in which I thought you created great discussion in your classes. You had activities with, and I remember the formal evaluation where you had the stickers on their head and they were going around communicating with one another. That was cool. Those are great activities. And so I think kids are definitely with you. And you had a combination at the end of the year of low and high quality. And you always are going to have some recall questions. That's just, you're going to have those, right? But doing some more high quality. And I don't know how familiar you are with Bloom's taxonomy. I got every time I think of a learning objective, I've got that triangle sitting right, and a list of words sitting right there on the board.
Awesome. Have you seen the one where there's questions on those? It's the Bloom's question.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think at some point we were shown that this year. You know, I constantly am going back to like my 3 or 4 favorite words. I always seem to be going back to create or evaluate or deconstruct, these things that you keep going back to the same words. Some of those words don't necessarily apply to what we're doing, but there's a long list of how you want to get up here,
Right, and there's nothing wrong with using the same words over and over again, because that creates a predictable environment and kids know what you expect. But definitely taking a look at where you can expand that a little bit is good.
Okay.
Is good. So that think time that you alluded to earlier, that's really important for kids to think of the questioning process, to give them that think time. Because it's important for us as adults.
Mm-hmm.
If we do too many rapid fire, if I'm in a staff meeting and do many rapid fire questions,
Right.
people are just looking at me like, so which one do you want me to answer?
Yeah. Right, yeah.
You really want me to answer, or you're just listening to yourself? So I think that's important. And I noticed that there were a few times that you did that in your classes when I was observing, and I don't even know if you noticed that you were doing it. I mean, I don't know. Is that something that you noticed about yourself?
I just know, going back to what I first said, is, in each trimester I've seen myself getting better in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's the communication, giving them a chance to kind of breathe too at times, those moments. But, yeah, I mean, most of it, I think it's done consciously every once in a while. I suppose the art of teaching is you get into a mode where it's a second nature, so you don't really even know you're doing it.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things about going through this evaluation process and giving feedback. And teachers say, "Gosh, I guess I really didn't know that I did that." It's funny because that's the conversation I have with Josh Davis. Is, man, I do that? Well, of course I do.
Right, it's ingrained almost.
It is. It is just part of what you are. So then 3C, engaging students in learning. I really felt like your activities and assignments were very appropriate. I thought you did a really good job of gauging, okay, I don't want to go too high level at the beginning and not have them be able to obtain what I want them to learn.
Right.
At the same time, it wasn't just, complete softball questions all the time. You did a good job of mixing that up and creating worthwhile activities for kids. So, I guess the big thing is continue to seek new instructional strategies.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a few that you're really doing well at.
Yeah.
And continuing to expand that. And that's really every teacher needs to continue to expand that. But in your second year, you're going to find that as you do that, it gets easier, right? Because you've got more strategies to use.
Right.
So continue to do that.
And I think the variety makes the classroom more fun, too.
Absolutely.
If I'm constantly using the same strategy over and over and over again, they know what to expect. That's a good thing, I suppose. But the other part is we're doing that again. Every once in a while, throwing a curveball in there. I like that as a student. So.
Yeah. And the other piece of that is in those activities, make sure there's a point at which either you are restating or having them restating, which is better, the learning they're supposed to be doing, right? So, because you should be able to walk up to any kid in your class and say, okay, what am I asking you to learn right now? And they should give you a pretty coherent response about kind of the overarching, well, here's what I should be learning how to edit this film properly. Even as simple as that, but being able to kind of restate to you that. So keep that in the back of your mind as one of those things, okay, so what are we learning right now? What am I asking them to learn? That's another piece.
Okay.
3D is using assessment and instruction, and I've really seen you progress this year from the beginning of the year to this year. I think you do a really good job of on-the-fly adjustments. And your on-the-fly adjustments are based upon verbal and nonverbal feedback by the kiddos. So you're adjusting to what's going on, and you shared a great example of, okay guys, hold on here. This is obvious, this deadline's not working for us. We're gonna do 2 extra days. That is using formative assessment to inform your instruction. That's a perfect example of that. So that's really good.
I know that an example of the growth, I think, is the first trimester. I honestly would not say that I did anything at least planned that was an exit ticket or a, what do they call it, formative assessment, right? Nothing along those lines, where you literally just, you take the papers in, you give a couple of glance, and they go in the circular file, but at least, you've held them accountable to something through the hour. And in the second trimester, a couple things, and I did it regularly throughout the third trimester. On those important days. There have been some days, Lee, where if you went up to a kid at the end of the period, you personally walked up and said you were just in Mr. Bleyer's class, what was the specific learning objective? Do you know exactly what you're doing and exactly what you're supposed to learn that day? There are going to be some days where they're like, I got no idea, I have no idea. I mean, honestly, because we're in the middle of a project, this one has a different issue, that one has some issue, this kid's way ahead, this kid's way behind, and we're just, it's kind of like running around, So I'm far from the model teacher on those days, and I've had plenty of them. So,
Well, and I think that will, the herding cats piece won't change for you, but what will change for you is that will become less frequent, right?
Oh, yeah.
It will become less frequent.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the nature of the beast. Just the nature of the beast.
Oh, okay.
So, let's see, what did I write here? And your checks for understanding, and when I say checks for understanding, I mean going up to kids, talking to them, and the exit tickets. You've done a great job with that. Those are effective strategies for you. So in this should say 3E, not 3D. Sorry, I'm going to change that. The demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness. I rated you proficient there, and I did that because I felt like you really did minor adjustments. I didn't see any major adjustments other than that big one you were just referring to me on, but I felt like you were making minor adjustments all the time smoothly, and the kids probably didn't even know you were making adjustments because you were doing it based upon doing some formative assessment, and your responsiveness to kids wasn't, well, come hell or high water, this is what you're doing.
That's just that tweaking thing.
It is.
You used that word with me 100 times. That I'm slowly throughout the first year getting to a point where I can tweak a given day or a given course. And that's what a lot of the summer is, and a lot of making sure that it's just, and on the fly sometimes. There have been those days, yeah. And it's weird. It can be different from period to period.
Yeah, and it always will be because it's a different group of kids.
Right.
Different group of kids.
It's crazy how that is.
So, and then domain 4, reflecting on teaching. I feel like you have shown, and I wanted to put the word overt willingness to receive and seek opportunities for professional development. You want to get better at your craft and what you're doing, and that is one of the biggest parts of becoming an effective teacher, is having that desire to receive feedback and not be too prideful, and coaching and just wanting to be better. And you exemplify that. If there was ratings in here, you would have gotten lots of proficient ratings in this area. I think one of the points that you figured out, Artie, is communicating with families is not the easiest thing in the world.
I've been too busy, and I don't look forward to it.
Right.
And it's usually not good.
Yeah.
And so I tend to avoid it,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily acceptable. And I'll bet, like you wrote in the thing that I read for the first time 20 minutes ago, it's going to help you, not hurt you.
Exactly.
Almost every time. It might be uncomfortable, but you're going to get people on your side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Mr. Bleyer, I really feel like you have had a tremendous year, and you're going to continue to progress as a teacher. You're going to continue to progress as an educator, and I fully expect to see all proficients in this next year. I mean, you're on your way. You are,
Yes.
and you have been an amazing addition to our building.
Oh, thanks.
You really have been.
Appreciate it, and I was just thinking to myself, it's kind of the alarm clock and the shower test. I don't need an alarm clock. That's a pretty good sign, My body has adjusted. That's because I was working from 4 to midnight, right? Now I'm working from 5:30 a.m. to 4, right? But most days I don't need an alarm clock, because the body says it's time to start to think about the day. And then when you're in the shower, I'm like, do I have everything lined up? Do I, how do I want to handle this? What happened in the last 24 hours that might change what the plan was? If your brain is working in those reasons, in those ways, then there's a legitimate reason to be motivated. I'm motivated every day to come in and get better. Have enjoyed it. Some good days, some bad days. I wish I could go back 12 months and say, Mr. Bleyer, sit down. Hi, I'm Mr. Bleyer. So let me return from the future and tell you what to do.
So let's say you could do that. What's 3 things that you tell Mr. Bleyer 12 months ago, 13 months ago?
Do everything that you can to, although it's almost unfair, but do everything that you can to make sure you're prepared for the week and the month that lies ahead. And what that means is you cannot go day by day. You'll be costing your students if you do that. There has to be a plan, but be flexible. Change that plan, slow it down, speed it up whenever you feel the need. Get your sleep, okay? No flipping around with the remote control until 11:15, even if there's something that you really have been wanting to watch on the DVR, okay? Save it for the weekends. And then I think the third thing would be, teachers talk about having to be on all day. And I know what it's like to be on, you know, on in front of thousands of people on live television, you know, where there is no script and there's no, sorry, can I do that again? But they're right. You are on. And if you are constantly exerting maximum energy, it will kill you. So you need to, today's an important day. Come with energy, make sure you hit all the bullet points. This one matters. Not because Lee's in the classroom, but because this is a linchpin to everything that we do. On another day, if things aren't going well, don't kill yourself. Relax, take a deep breath, and understand that, you know, the students are the ones that are, this building's for them, not for how well you perform in front of a group of students. So that's, you know, relax, find your voice, and until you've found it, just, you know, don't try too hard, because it can almost be a detriment. The end, Keith. Good luck.
So is, looking at your evaluation, you've had a chance to review them, we know we've talked about it. Are there any things on there that, any questions you have about that?
No, I thought it was all...
Any clarifications that you need?
No, none of it surprised me. All of it was fair. You know, I think I just can't say enough about coming in with communication skills, because it's interesting in observing other teachers just in little snippets. You know, there are some teachers that are comfortable in front of people, and still some teachers who are very good teachers who just aren't that comfortable. And so that helps me tremendously. And I've said, and I told you this on the phone, I think before I even took the job, if I hadn't coached adolescents for 15 years, almost 20 years now, you know, we would be having a different review. You know, to be able to kind of push and press and pull and tug and arm and this, and I mean, you know, it just matters so much. But the art of the teacher is still way out there for me. So all the things about instructional strategies and questioning strategies and communicating with students and understanding that, you know, I love what Stancliffe said to me the other day when I had a bad day after my soccer gear was stolen, and 4 students, I looked at their grades and their unexcused absences and their attitudes and all this stuff, and I wrote an email saying, what do I do about these kids? And Stancliffe just kind of off the cuff said, Bleyer, you can't fire students. You know, you want to fire students. That's not how it works here. We gotta do something. Something has to be done. And so that something is what I'm still grasping and struggling to get to sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and just like most things, it's not the end result really. It's the journey.
Oh yeah.
It's the journey.
Yeah.
And you have
a lot of people don't get that. I can't tell you how many people I've run into that go, I can't wait till, you know, everything's just perfect. I just know what I'm doing. No, you don't, and that's not possible.
Yeah, that's called death.
It's called death, and it's called, you know, sitting in a toll booth.
Yeah.
And guess what? You know, even that changes. The rates go up. Now I have to collect 35 cents. You know, or the new boss wants me to, you know, process the money in a different way. Yeah. So I'm always, you know, that keeps you young. No question.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about it, and I appreciate all the feedback, and you know, the presence that you bring in the building is, you know, the attitude and the investment, you know, the investment that kids have in this school is palpable, and how well teachers want to do, I think, comes from the standard that you're setting and the energy and the passion. And every time you say it's a great day to be a Raven, it's not phony, and I think that trickles down. The opportunities, I can't say how many teachers have come up to me in the hallway and have said, how you doing? I mean, they care. It's usually like, how you doing? You're still here. So, but it's all been very helpful, and it's been a really, really cool experience, you know. I'm actually more comfortable communicating and being around teenagers than I am adults now. I get in a room of like people who are all 40, and I'm like, how do I talk to them?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That's so true.
I know.
It's
10
so
teenagers
true.
walk in, I'm like, what is up? Let's get to work. It's like those mothers that stay at home with like 4 kids all under the age of 4.
Yeah.
And then they go out to dinner with their husband, and they're like, well, listen, little Lee, how's your day?
And they start cutting you.
Yeah, they start cutting your meat. That's good. Okay.
Well, you have had a tremendous year. And part of it is because you prepared yourself well, and part of it is because you've worked your hiney off. You bring a lot to the table, Mr. Bleyer, when it comes to not only just your classes, but what you bring to the school and the enthusiasm you have for your soccer program, the great, amazing Ravens report that we have. I mean, that has established a whole new level for us in communicating with kids and just the way kids feel about their school. Whose other class is on display every day for 5 minutes?
And I feel that pressure sometimes, but the kids just do a great job. I agree with you. Yesterday's, I thought it was an untraditional Ravens report. There were no anchors.
But it was
But when you bookend, I was talking to Jan, that one that Corbin Carpenter and his classmates made, where he's walking around in the Raven suit doing all these cool things, and then at the end you got the little PSA that the kids put together on, not walking around with your headphones on all day long, listen to the world. Wow.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I sent it to my mom.
Yeah.
Well,
none of that stuff is I don't spoon feed them any of that stuff.
Yeah. And
The only thing that I will fully admit to is that we're pressed for time. There are days that the skeleton of the script will be written by me, and then they tweak it and have a little fun with it, and but all these productions are all theirs, the ideas are theirs. I just wonder when we're going to run out. I don't know if we ever will.
well, you have exceeded expectations with that Ravens report. I mean, we have
That's
high
fun.
hopes for it, and you've knocked it out of the park.
Cool.
So, as we move forward next year, I hope you get a really great summer.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you get to do some R&R. We'll get you that yearbook training,
Mm-hmm.
and then know that we take that next step in instructional
Right,
strategies. We're going to have some training next year and student learning goals,
Okay.
and that's going to be a foreign term to you because no one knows what that means yet, because we've piloted that with a couple teachers here to try to figure out what that means, and looking at how students are progressing in your class with data, not just qualitatively, oh, this is how it feels.
Okay.
So we'll do some figuring out and training on that, and but the biggest part, I guess, is I hope you get some R&R this summer and replenish yourself, because you need to do that for yourself.
Yeah, teachers definitely need it.
Yeah.
That was a preconceived notion. They just roll into summer and jump on the bike right away. Well, no, there's a decompression that takes place for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Yeah, you're welcome.
and very good year.
Cool.
Very good year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Bleyer.